What is good, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Wrestling with Fans podcast. This is a pro wrestling podcast created by fans for fans from a fan's perspective. My name is Kyle. This is episode 216, your AEW Full Gear review. God, I can't even talk. Full Gear review. That's right. I actually watched Full Gear last night. Shout out to my buddy Rick. Again, you remember him from the show a couple weeks ago, Gay McNerdia. Invited the wife and I over to his place to hang out, have some good food, have some even better company, and enjoy an awesome pay-per-view. It was absolutely insane, but before I get any further than that, if you notice the graphic right at the top, today the world lost Jason David Frank. Now, for some of you who know me, or I'm sure there's a lot of you out there as well, we're huge Power Rangers fans growing up. Of course, Jason portrayed Tommy Oliver, the Green Ranger, then he came back as the White Ranger, and then he was Red Turbo and Red Zeo, Red Turbo, and then Black Dino, and then, the Legacy stuff, Lord Draken is all based off of him. Like, he is very intertwined into the world of Power Rangers, and per TMZ, it looks like he passed away, he committed suicide, which is, of course, tragic. So if you or anybody you know is having those kinds of thoughts, make sure you reach out to someone, reach out to me, reach out to a friend, reach out to a family member. You are not alone. He had been going through a divorce at the time, and I don't want to speculate, but Jason David Frank, dead at the age of 49. Rest in peace, and may the power protect you always. Let me just interrupt myself here for a quick moment. First off, thank you for checking out Wrestling with Fans here on YouTube. If you're enjoying what you see, make sure to leave a big old thumbs up and click that subscribe button down below. The other ways you can help support the show is to follow us across all of our other social medias. Check us out, facebook.com/Wrestling with Fans. Hulk smash that like button to keep up to date with everything going on here with Wrestling with Fans. Or you can follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Wrestling with Fans. Check us out on the web at WrestlingWithFans.com. New audio shows go up every single Sunday at midnight. Or you can take us on the go and download us to your favorite podcast, the listening device. You can get us wherever you get your podcast fix. Just search Wrestling with Fans Podcast. We are on all the major platforms: Apple, Google, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher. Wherever you get your podcast fix, you can find Wrestling with Fans. Last but certainly not least, comments, questions, feedback, topics you want covered on the show, shoot me an email, wwfshow@gmail.com. Again, that's wwfshow@gmail.com. Links to everything are down in the video description and down below, so make sure you check that out. Without further ado, back to the show. Alright, we are back in here live. I decided to do a live recording this week. Just because I really have enjoyed getting back into the live streaming type of content. Got a lot of other fun stuff for you as well. But let's dive right into it. AEW Full Gear. It took place last night as I'm recording, November 19th, from the Prudential Center in Newark, New Jersey. And I tell you what, this is the first. You guys who have been following the show or following the channel for a long time know that I've been a hardcore WWE my entire life. I got into some AEW there for a while, kind of fell out of love with what they were doing. So I really haven't, I pay attention, I read results, things like that, but I don't watch. Last night was the first time in a long time I have watched a complete AEW show start to finish. And I tell you what, That was a long show. 5 hours, including the pre-show. 13 total matches. It just made for a very long evening. I had a lot of fun, not only just with the non-wrestling stuff, but with the wrestling stuff. I enjoyed the show. Overall, I thought it was pretty good. There was some really good stuff and some really not so good stuff. So before we start with the main card, let's talk about the pre-show. We got 3 pre-show matches. First up was Chaos, a team consisting of Orange Cassidy, Trent Beretta, Chuck Taylor, Rocky Romero, and Danhausen, taking on the Factory, QT Marshall, Aaron Solo, Lee Johnson, Nick Camarado, and Cole Carter. The match goes 11:55, just about 12 minutes. And to be perfectly blunt, I only really knew the Best Friends and Danhausen. I mean, I know who QT Marshall is, but I don't really know anything about him. So over half the people in this match, I had no idea who the hell they were. It was a very comedic style match for me. The return of Danhausen coming out, finally getting in the ring to wrestle. We hadn't seen Danhausen wrestle yet in AEW, so that was cool to see. I think he's very entertaining. I'm hit or miss on pockets, and the rest of them, I really got nothing about. The crowd seemed to be okay with it. I guess it's, if you're going to put this anywhere in this massive card, putting it the main or the first match you get on the pre-show is probably a good place for it to go. So, it is what it is. It was on the card and it was there. We get a run back in match number 2 on the pre-show of the AEW World Championship Eliminator Tournament semifinals. Ricky Starks defeating Brian Cage in 10 minutes. Again, I thought it was a pretty fun match. Brian Cage is just an absolute monster. Ricky Starks, I didn't really know a lot about him. I mean, I knew who he was. I was really impressed by what I saw. I thought it was a fun, entertaining match. Ricky Starks could be, big time player in the next few years, in AEW and in the world of professional wrestling in general. Thought it was a great match. The match goes 10 minutes even. Ricky Starks is supposed to face, and I'm trying to remember all of this stuff because, again, I don't watch AEW, so I'm like way behind on all the ins and outs, but he was supposed to have wrestled someone, Ethan Page, who got pulled for an injury, so now they're going to wrestle on Dynamite this coming week, I believe, for the finals of the Eliminator Tournament, so that should be interesting to watch. You can check that out on Wednesday on TBS now. Yeah, TBS. And the third and final match on the pre-show saw Eddie Kingston defeating Yun Akiyama. Match goes 10.5 minutes. Kingston picking up the win via pinfall. This one, again, I don't really know a lot about either one. I mean, I know who Eddie Kingston is. I love his promo work. I love his passion. But as far as the ins and outs, it was kind of hard for me to really follow to get in. Apparently, he's been doing this thing where he's been wrestling Japanese wrestlers. So I'm just trying to follow a little bit with, things going on. And I was, trying to keep up to date with everything. Didn't quite work out the way I had originally planned. And we finally get to the main show. Now, here's where I know a little bit more of things going on. The main show started out with a cage match. The big cage match. Jungle Boy Jack Perry going one-on-one with Luchasaurus, who had Christian Cage by his side. This is a steel cage match. This is the big blow-off to the feud between former best friends and tag team partners. And I mean, I'd only followed kind of from afar for a while on their feud. But I tell you what, this was a very, very fun match. Jungle Boy is a future star. He's very small. He's not a big guy, so that might hamper him in certain aspects of wrestling. But overall, I thought it was just a great match. Lots of action back and forth. The only real criticism I have of the match has nothing to do with the performers in the ring. The only criticism I have for the match is the cage itself. Now, from my understanding, the way Ricky was trying to explain it looked like they had to leave the cage up off the ground so that way you could get the chairs out from under the ring. And by doing so, the cage sat like 6 to 8 inches off the ground. They had to put a riser underneath the steps. To step into the ring, you had to step up and over the bar where the door opening was. I am not a fan of the aesthetic of the AEW steel cage at all. It took me out of the match for like the first 5 minutes because all I kept seeing, and then the gap between the ring and the cage is about like this. It allows enough people for smaller guys they can fall in, which to me is extremely dangerous, and apparently that's happened in the past. But again, the visuals kind of took me out of the early parts of the match. But the match itself way more than made up for it. It was such a phenomenal match. Great opener. Jungle Boy picking up the win with the snare trap at 18 minutes and 40 seconds. Then we get an interesting one here. We have the 6-man tag team match for the trios titles. Your trios champions, Death Triangle, Pac, Pentagon Jr., Penta El Cerro Miedo, and Rey Fenix, the Lucha Brothers, defending against the returning Elite, Kenny Omega, and the Young Bucks. But for all you Cornette listeners out there, that's Twinkle Toes, McFingerbang, and the Hardly Boys, for those keeping score at home. Now, I don't really need to speak much more on my thoughts on the Elite. I've kind of made that pretty clear throughout the lifetime of the show. Apparently they were trying to copyright the name Wayward Sons for wrestling, but apparently they dropped it not long after. They did come out to the Kansas song "Carry On My Wayward Son," and for me, like, it didn't fit their entrance. It was kind of a little weird for me, but again, wrestling is subjective. I thought it was a little weird. Didn't think it really fit them very much, but it seemed a lot of people loved it. I've seen a lot of people on TikTok like it. I've seen a lot of people on YouTube and Facebook, commenting on it. I've really liked, them coming out to that music. As far as the match itself, I love. This is really. I'm trying to figure out the right way to word this so it makes sense, because it makes sense in my head, but coming out of my mouth, it might not make sense. I am not a fan of the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega's styles of matches. I'm not a big fan of the spot monkey. It's move, move, move. They are very good at doing moves. They are very good at doing a lot of moves in order. And I made this comment last night to my friends. I was like, look, when they're in the ring wrestling this style of match, it looks like choreographed dancing. It doesn't look like 2 people, 4 people, whatever. It doesn't look like guys in the ring trying to win a wrestling match. It looks like they're in there doing choreographed moves. And I think that's where my anti-Young Buck stance comes from. It's nothing against them. I really enjoy watching them on being the Elite. Kenny Omega is, hit or miss with me sometimes. But, Pac, Pentagon, and Rey Fenix are all extremely talented as well. All 6 guys just completely tore the house down. It's not my style of wrestling, but, the crowd was into the whole match. There were some fuck CM Punk chants, Colt Cabana chants, because, the crowd's not going to let them forget about that. So that was interesting. The crowd was hyped for the entire match. It was a lot of fun to watch. Again, it was just not my style. And as it turns out, Rey Fenix ended up using the hammer, much to his chagrin, I guess. He kind of apparently been not looking forward to doing the whole cheating thing. Pac eventually convinced him to do it, using the hammer to pick up the pinfall. Again, the match goes 18 minutes and 40 seconds. And later on in the card, later on in the night, we did find out that was actually match 1 in a series of 7. It'll be a best of 7 between Death Triangle and the Elite. So this should be interesting. Again, if this is your style of match, I'm sure you all loved it. It wasn't for me. It was still very entertaining. I was thoroughly sports entertained throughout this match. Moving on to match number 6. For the TBS title, we have Jade Cargill defending against Nyla Rose. The match was fairly short. Actually, the shortest one on the entire card, only going 8 minutes. Jade had an awesome Thundercats Chitara cosplay for her wrestling gear. It looked great, really cool. She came out with Kiera Hogan and Layla Gray. Nyla Rose had Marina Shafir and Vicky Guerrero at her side. Jade Cargill has made a lot of strides. I remember watching a couple of her early matches when I was still watching AEW more regularly. She has made strides to get a lot better in the ring. She's still very green. She had a great partner in there with Nyla Rose. But in the match, it was kind of slow. It was sloppy at times. This was my least favorite match on the entire card. And that's saying something because a lot of people still liked it. I personally just was not one of them. Jade picking up the win via pinfall at 8 minutes even. All right, so let's do something here real quick. Let's take a quick little pause for the calls. So you can see on the screen, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. Excuse me, you can find us at Wrestling with Fans. WrestlingWithFans.com is a website. You can get us wherever you get your podcast fix. Just search Wrestling with Fans Podcast. And of course, last but certainly not least, the email, wwfshow@gmail.com. So moving on, match 7 of the night. It is the 4-way match, the Fatal 4-way. That was a delay. That was a little bit of a delay. Sorry about that. It was a Fatal 4-way for the Ring of Honor World Championship. You have the Ocho, Chris Jericho, defending against Bryan Danielson, Claudio Castagnoli, and Sammy Guevara. This is one of the better matches of the night. By far, one of the better matches of the night. I mean, it might have been... I think it's probably my favorite match of the night. And there's a 1A, 1B, and we'll get to the 1B here in a few minutes. A lot of action to the point where I think they had to be very careful of the timing of different spots just to make sure you're not drawing people's attention away where, in the arena, you can kind of watch, you see a little wider angle of it depending on where you're sitting, and you could probably follow it a little bit better. On TV, they only have basically one camera angle. I mean, they have multiple cameras, but they're really only showing one camera angle the entire time. You had a little back and forth with Jericho and Sammy Guevara throughout the match. Brian, every wrestler looked at some point like they were going to win the Ring of Honor title. I don't think there was a spot where there wasn't any near falls. I think everybody got at least a couple of near falls in the match, which I thought was great. Lots of action. Chris Jericho ultimately picking up the win to retain the Ring of Honor World Championship. The Ocho retains at 21 and a half minutes. And again, this is like 1A, 1B. This is probably 1A for me for best match of the night. A lot of fun. I really, really enjoyed it. So that's how that was supposed to work. The next match on the card, Saraya, formerly known as Paige, making her AEW in-ring debut against the one and only Dr. Britt Baker, DMD. Again, this was an interesting match. It was an interesting match for me because I was a big fan of Paige when she was in WWE. I'm a huge fan of Mrs. Adam Cole, Bebe, Dr. Britt Baker, DMD. But I don't think they really had a lot of good chemistry in the ring. Like, just something felt off. Now, I don't know if that was the fact that perhaps they've never, been able to work in the ring. I'm sure they probably got some time in, off screen, obviously. Wink, wink. It could be the ring rust that Saraya has, not being able to wrestle in, 7-8 years, however long it's been, whatever the time. I don't know the exact time frame, but it's been several years, 5-6 years at least, that she hasn't been able to compete. She was just recently cleared, signed with AEW. her first match against former world champion Britt Baker, DMD, it just something felt off. It just seemed, and it didn't help either. The match goes 12 and a half minutes. Saraya picking up the win via pinfall. I don't know if it was just too long of a match. A couple of the people I was with were predicting it was going to be a straight up squash. I wasn't quite sure how that would have worked, but I couldn't imagine they would squash the former world champion Britt Baker. I don't know, just something felt off. Just something seemed off about the match, and I really can't put my finger on what it was. I'm sure these two will run it back, and I'm sure as Saraya gets more time in the ring, she'll just get back to that level that she was at before. I have no doubt. She's such an awesome talent. But yeah, Saraya wins in her first match back in several years, 12 and a half minutes. Match number 9. We got some beefy boys, the meaty men slapping meat. It was a 3-way match for the TNT Championship. Wardlow, your defending champion, defending against Powerhouse Hobbs and Samoa Joe. Now, Samoa Joe is already a Ring of Honor champion. I'm trying to think of what belt he's holding currently. It is the television title. That's right. Ring of Honor television champion Samoa Joe. And, of course, Powerhouse Hobbs. 3 beefy boys slapping meat. And I made the comment before the match started. I was like, this could either be the best match of the night or it could be a stinker. Because sometimes when you put these big guys in the ring together, it doesn't work. And luckily, these 3 guys can all go in the ring. And it was such an amazing match. I had a lot of fun watching this match. We were split in our predictions between Wardlow and Powerhouse Hobbs. I picked Wardlow. I was like, well, they're not going to give it to Joe because he's already got a belt. I don't know if they've given Powerhouse enough, bill to be able to dethrone Wardlow. And to all of our surprise, the Samoan submission machine, Samoa Joe, wins via technical submission, tapping out Powerhouse Hobbs in 9 minutes and 55 seconds. The second shortest match on the card. And to me, this was match 1B. The 4-way was match 1A. This 3-way was match 1B. It wasn't the longest match, but I tell you what, there was a lot of high spots, a lot of crazy stuff. These guys can move. Excuse me. Really entertaining. I enjoyed it a lot. But again, Samoa Joe, now a 2-time champion. A fun fact. Currently in professional wrestling, there are 2 Samoans who are both named Joe, and they are both holding 2 wrestling championships. One being Samoa Joe, and of course the other being Roman Reigns, your tribal chief. Acknowledge him. But we're not here to talk about it now. We're going to stay with AEW, guys. The next match on the card, match 10, was a no disqualification tag team match. Sting and Darby Allin taking on Double J Jeff Jarrett, Jay Lethal, who had Sanjay Dutt and Satnam Singh with him. Sting and Darby get the win in 11 minutes via pinfall. What can I say about Jeff Jarrett? Even at the ripe old age of 55, Jeff Jarrett could still go in the ring pretty good. I'm very impressed with Jeff Jarrett's performance. And even the icon Sting at age 63 still manages to somehow get through these matches. And I think it's smart, too, that they're saving him a lot. They're not having him matches week after week. So I think that's allowed Sting to kind of prolong his career a little bit more, which I think is great. Overall, again, it was a fun match. It wasn't like a this knockdown, drag out like match of the year candidate. They did a lot with the no DQ to help protect Sting, to help protect Jeff Jarrett. I'm sure Sanjay Dutt gets involved a few times. Satnam Singh gets involved a few times. Ultimately, the icon and Darby Allin pick up the win. Again, 11 minutes. Sting and Darby Allin are your victors. Moving along, we have the AEW Women's World Championship, the interim championship. Tony Storm, your defending interim champion, taking on Jamie Hayter. The match goes 15 minutes even, and we have a brand new interim women's world champion, Jamie Hayter, shocking a lot of people. All of us predicted Tony Storm to retain, but Jamie Hayter surprised us and a lot of people. The crowd was really behind her, though. The crowd was really behind her. Britt Baker and Rebel also made their appearances in this match, getting involved. The only thing I'll say about this match is it went too long for me. I think they could have probably cut 5 or 6 minutes off this match and still gotten the same effect. There were so many. The last 4 to 5 minutes of this match was nothing but false finishes and interference spots before the ultimate win, by Jamie Hayter. I think they could have sure there was a while in that match where I'm like, okay, this is just end it. Okay, this is it. No. Okay, this is it. No. And I didn't really like that. I wish it would have went a little bit shorter. I think they could have gotten their same story told in the ring in less time. And that is my only critique of the match. Everything else about the match was great. I enjoyed the match. Tony Storm, she got that cake. Jamie Hayter, pretty damn good herself in the ring. But yeah, the match just went long. And that's the only critique I have about the match. It was great, but I think it could have been a lot shorter. It felt like it was long. And it didn't help either that this is match 11 of 13. We're already 4 hours into this 5-hour total pay-per-view. And I think it was just it could have been a bad spot. Had they switched this with another match, it might not have felt that way. It might have felt a lot better in a different spot on the card. The next to last match was a match I was actually kind of looking forward to. It was for the AEW World Tag Team titles. The Acclaimed Max Caster and Anthony Bowens defending against Swerve in Our Glory, Swerve Strickland, and Keith Lee. The Acclaim coming out, Max Caster doing his rap was really fun. He had some good zingers in there on Keith Lee and on Swerve Strickland. Talking about how Adidas is dropping Kanye, brought that up. Death to Twitter. It was good. I was thoroughly enjoying the rap, and he even gave it a little more extended performance. He gave a little extra on top of the normal couple one-liners that he gives. The match goes in 19 minutes 40 seconds, and ultimately at the end, Keith Lee refused to cheat to win, causing him to walk out on Swerve, allowing the Acclaimed to pick up the win. Again, it was a great match. It started to... Again, I think with the Tony Jamie match, the crowd kind of lulled because the match went long. This match brought that crowd back up and ready for that main event match, which we're going to talk about here in just a minute. But again, the Acclaimed retained the AEW World Tag Team titles, 19 minutes and 40 seconds over Swerve and Our Glory. We'll be back in just a second with the main event, the AEW World Championship match. Let me just interrupt myself here for a quick moment. First off, thank you for checking out Wrestling with Fans here on YouTube. If you're enjoying what you see, make sure to leave a big old thumbs up and click that subscribe button down below. The other ways you can help support the show is to follow us across all of our other social medias. Check us out, facebook.com/Wrestling with Fans. Hulk smash that like button to keep up to date with everything going on here with Wrestling with Fans. Or you can follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Wrestling with Fans. Check us out on the web at WrestlingWithFans.com. New audio shows go up every single Sunday at midnight. Or you can take us on the go, download us to your favorite podcast, the listening device. You can get us wherever you get your podcast fix. Just search Wrestling with Fans Podcast. We are on all the major platforms, Apple, Google, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher. Wherever you get your podcast fix, you can find Wrestling with Fans. Last but certainly not least, comments, questions, feedback, topics you want covered on the show, shoot me an email, wwfshow@gmail.com. Again, that's wwfshow@gmail.com. Links to everything are down in the video description and down below, so make sure you check that out. Without further ado, back to the show. Are you ready? Let's talk. let's talk about the main event. The match everybody had been anticipating for quite a while. Jon Moxley with William Regal defending the AEW World Championship against Maxwell Jacob Freeman, MJF. And this was actually the cash-in for the Casino Ladder poker chip that MJF won at the last pay-per-view, or the pay-per-view before that. Whenever he did the return, when he was the Joker. MJF's entrance. I really, really hope that was a plant in the crowd, because otherwise there's going to be a lot of unhappy people on the internet when the non-wrestling fans see it. He sees this large-breasted woman there next to the railing, walks up, just looks down and says, "Do you mind?" And she said, "Yeah," and he went down, just straight up motorboated her. MJF motorboating some big-ass titties on pay-per-view. If that's not indicative of the man MJF, I don't know what is. I'm going to say, this is my unpopular opinion. We kind of got into a heated argument. Not really heated, but it went in an intense argument conversation last night that we're going to have Rick back on the show here very, very soon to talk about this. But my comment was, Jon Moxley is awesome. I don't feel like Jon Moxley has been a great AEW World Champion. I think Jon Moxley is better in the chase. And then it was brought, the counterpoints to me were, he was a guy that's that's basically been the champion for the last 3 years, basically put the entire company on his back. Every time they would try to get the belt off of him, they would get hurt, so they had to go back to him. And my counterpoint to that was, that's not indicative of good of Moxley. That kind of argues against him, that he just happened to be the only guy there. Which then brought out the comparisons to Hulk Hogan and John Cena. So that's where that conversation is going to go. They wanted to compare Moxley to Hogan and Cena and Austin, and I said, no, that's an insult to them. And that's not taken away from Mox. I love Mox. But as a guy who's on that level, your Hogans, your Austins, your Cenas, Mox isn't there. I don't think he carries that kind of star power. Now, in the hardcore, internet wrestling community, yes, Moxley is probably the higher than all of those other guys. No doubt. I have no doubt that in, certain circles, Mox is on the level above them at this point. I think it's also indicative of the fact that AEW just didn't have anybody else. Like, that's not, a notch on Mox's belt because they didn't have anybody to put the belt on. That's a knock at AEW for not having anybody at that level, at, world title level, to put the belt on. But again, we'll save that discussion for another time. The match itself was great. A lot of back and forth action. William Regal, of course, at ringside. Let's skip to the end here. We'll keep this podcast a little bit on the shorter side this week. Again, since I'm going solo. But at the end, MJF goes to put the ring on. William Regal talks him out of it. MJF tosses the ring outside. Him and Mox get back into it. Then the next thing you know, here we have it. William Regal himself sliding a pair of knucks to MJF. MJF uses the knucks on Mox, pins him 1, 2, 3, and we have a brand new AEW World Heavyweight Champion. MJF defeats Jon Moxley in 23 minutes and 15 seconds to close out the show. The crowd was going nuts. This has been basically a long time coming for MJF and AEW. They had another media scrum after, but we're not going to talk about that. It wasn't like all out brawl out. This was a little more subdued. But the era of MJF is finally upon us, and Mox can take that well-deserved, long overdue break from professional wrestling. I know he had to go out for rehab there for a minute, and he's been wanting to take a vacation a couple times in the last couple years, but every time they get the belt off of him, the guy he wrestles, he loses against, gets hurt, and they by default have to put it back on. But again, we're going to save that discussion with Rick when he comes back on the show for another time. But overall, again, to me, as a whole, the pay-per-view, I was thoroughly sports entertained. I thought it was a great show. It was a long show. The pre-show started at 7, the main card started at 8, and the pay-per-view ended, just around midnight. So that's a long time. That's a long time to watch any show. 13 matches in total. What's that? 10 on the main card, 3 on the pre-show. So, it's a long card. Like, it's a long, long show. And all the matches were long. Only 2 matches went under 10 minutes. And they just happened to be... the three-way for the TNT title was under 10 minutes. And Jade and Nyla was under 10 minutes. Everything else went over 10. 2 matches go over 20. The tag team title match was just under 20. So it was... paced out pretty good. The opener, the cage match, went just about 19 minutes. The 6-man tag went about 19 minutes. So, there was a good longer and shorter matches. Nothing really too short. The shortest match, again, 8 minutes. But if I'm going to give it a grade, I'm gonna give it probably a solid A-. It was better than Dirty Saudi Blood Money. And even with not knowing all the intricacies of all the storylines, I was thoroughly sports entertained by Full Gear. So, it's my first time watching AEW in a long time. I can't even remember the last AEW show I watched all the way through. So, it was interesting for me. It's quite interesting to sit down and watch a full AEW show. Now, does this mean that I'm going to go full-blown AEW? No. I'm not even really going full-blown WWE at this point. I'm only able to watch when I can. This week, I do want to drop a video on the YouTube channel because we do have Survivor Series coming next weekend. So next week will be the Survivor Series review. Survivor Series is going to be on Saturday. I'm going to try to drop the Survivor Series preview. I'll do a preview video for the wonderful people here on YouTube, talking about the card and getting ready for War Games, which is just a shame that WWE doesn't have William Regal right now to give his yearly War Games spiel. So let me know what you think. Comment down below on the video, comment on the live stream. We were live streaming on Facebook and YouTube today. I haven't live streamed in a while, so we didn't get a lot of people in, which is fine. We're going to be doing more streams in the future. So yeah, it was a lot of fun to do this live for everyone on Facebook and for YouTube. And for all you audio listeners, you know the deal. You can comment on the post, DM on the socials, shoot an email. Let me know what you thought of AEW Full Gear, or go to the YouTube channel. There's a community post, my first community post on Wrestling with Fans. I finally got the community tab unlocked, and I asked what your letter grade was on Full Gear. So that's what I want you to do. Go to the YouTube channel, Wrestling with Fans, youtube.com/Wrestling with Fans, or you can search Wrestling with Fans podcast on the YouTube app. Click the community tab and take the poll. What did you think of Full Gear? I'd love to know from you. And leave a comment on there as well with what you thought. What was your favorite match on Full Gear? But that's going to wrap it up for this week's show. Again, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok at Wrestling with Fans, WrestlingWithFans.com. New audio shows drop every single Sunday night at midnight. Get us wherever you get your podcast fix. Wrestling with Fans podcast. Just search that term. You'll find us. We're on all the big platforms. WWFshow@gmail.com is the email address. Sorry, brain fart. Just trying to get set up here for the end of the show. Guys, that's going to do it for this week's episode. Thank you all for watching. Thank you all for listening. Once again, my name is Kyle. We'll see you next time right here on Wrestling with Fans.